Derek wrote two immensely important books, very, very different books, but not unrelated. And many think both are masterpieces of contemporary philosophy. The earlier one, Reasons and Persons, is the one that has most directly affected practical ethics. And then over many decades, Derek worked on a volume, or a couple of volumes, and now a third volume came out with the grand title of On What Matters. And here he moved away from things that seem to have direct practical implication to deal with the most foundational questions about ethics, whether anything matters and how, and whether there is an objective moral reality that we might try to discover and understand. I'll just say something about the overall significance of that work for practical ethics, which is indirect but still immense, which has to do with what we think we're doing when we're engaging in practical ethics. Are we just expressing various opinions of cultural conventions that dominate our social milieu, in which case that can be an interesting social science kind of project of spelling out the conventions of our society. Probably not much help with dealing with kind of new challenges that may not have answers pre-given by our culture. But that would all make ethics a lot less interesting, less important, and there'd be less reason for people outside of ethics to be terribly concerned with the intricate arguments of philosophers working in practical ethics. But Derek thought that there are these true answers out there. There are ways of finding out about them. They're not merely subjective or culturally relative or merely reflective of public opinion at some point in time, but they are objective, in some way timeless answers to the deepest ethical questions about what matters and what to do and how we ought to relate to each other. These are not merely creations that we produce out of nothing or out of our psychological or evolutionary makeup, but in some way really out there, just use as a metaphor, things that practical ethics can discover, and it's not easy to discover it. There's a lot of indeterminacy and unclarity and disagreement that needs to be resolved, and Derek was very concerned about whether we can resolve such ethical disagreements in that later work. But he thought that that is something we can overcome and reach a consensus about what really matters. Except those arguments are very abstract and theoretical, but they, if successful, would change everything we do within practical ethics and the kind of significance that activity has by giving us a certain kind of confidence that there's something there we actually can converge on, that our debates and arguments about all these concrete issues are not whistling in the dark. We're actually getting somewhere, and we can get to that place, and there is a place to get to as a destination to that kind of ethical reflection. Those very meta-ethical reflections of Derek would change the character of practical ethics and give it some kind of substance that it may lack otherwise. So that's the way in which Derek's work, I think, will continue to inform practical reflection for quite a while.